My wedding was not over yet when John Fu suddenly left and went missing. I made many calls, but none of them were answered. Just as I was toasting alone under the questioning gazes of the crowd, I saw he had posted something on social media. The content read that when you love someone, you want to kiss her lips anytime, anywhere, and the accompanying picture showed him kissing his female assistant in bed. I was taken aback for a long time, wiped away the tears from the corners of my eyes, and left a message asking him for his address. I offered to order takeout for him, hoping he would eat well and regain the strength to continue. I didn't greet anyone. I quietly left the wedding venue and returned to our marital home to pack my things. At the bottom of the wardrobe, there was a wooden box containing a bracelet. This was the only gift John ever gave me during our relationship, and I had to plead with his grandmother on my knees to get it back after she kicked him out of the house due to his gambling debts. I cherished that item and wore it every day, even when it broke a few months ago. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. As for the gifts I gave John, our home was filled with countless watches, computers, and clothes. Perhaps I spoiled John too much, which gave him the audacity to be with another woman on our wedding night and even publicly post on social media to provoke me. In his eyes, I am both conservative and overly dependent, too afraid to divorce and unable to live without him. I still remember during our engagement, he tearfully told me, "Sophia Lee, you are the only light in my life. I don't know how to live without you. My love for you will never change." What was once a sincere and touching relationship has now become a thorn in my heart, truly painful. He has changed, spending time with his female assistant and even seeking her out on our wedding night. Since that's the case, why should I continue to torment myself? This absurd marriage and unequal relationship must come to an end. I went home, drank 2 cans of beer, and posted on my social media to announce that I have ended things with John. Everyone is welcome to come and flirt with me. I then took a nap while feeling the effects of the alcohol, and the next day I was roused by John's messages and calls. "Sophia, why did you suddenly leave the wedding venue? Everyone is looking for you. Also, what do those posts on your social media mean? We just got married a day ago, and you're already thinking about divorce? Are you deliberately trying to embarrass me?" he asked angrily. I retorted, "Then why did you leave? What did you post on your moments?" At that moment, I had become calm, my tone was even, and I was no longer as emotionally charged as I had been before. I was taken aback for a moment, then raised my voice and said, "Sophia, aren't you just being jealous? You can't stand seeing me with another woman, so you should try to win me over. I'm not going anywhere. After all, I can be easily swayed." Whenever he was in the wrong, he would roar in this way, throwing out all kinds of arguments. It really wore me out. I have endured being treated as a tool by John for so long, and I already feel exhausted. Don't pull this kind of stunt again. First send out an apology on social media, then come kneeling in front of me to admit your mistakes, and finally, you can visit each relative to make amends before I even consider forgiving you. Otherwise, I really want to divorce you. Before John hung up the phone, I heard a lot of laughter. He is always so willful and self-righteous. He might be sitting there with his legs crossed, waiting for me to crawl over like a dog and beg for mercy. He's really been spoiled by me. I couldn't be bothered to pay him any attention and was just thinking about getting some more sleep when John's grandmother called. "Sophia, are you getting a divorce? What was the reason for John's departure on the wedding day? Tell me the truth, and I'll help you. Marriage is an important matter and shouldn't be taken lightly when it comes to divorce." Grandma Fu seemed quite anxious about this. In the Fu family, Grandma Fu has always treated me the best. When my family was going through tough times due to my parents' illness, it was she who gave me the opportunity to work at a charity organization. I have also lived up to her trust in me. She trusted me deeply and regarded me as her own granddaughter, filling the void of familial love in my heart. It was precisely for this reason that I agreed to John's confession and tried to be in a relationship. Now, when I heard Grandma Fu ask me this, I couldn't help but feel a lump in my throat and asked, "Grandma, would you spend your life with someone who doesn't love you?" "Of course not," Grandma Fu replied with conviction. So, I told Grandma Fu the truth. John doesn't love me. He has someone else in his heart, someone he deeply cares for, his assistant, Lucy Liu. I got hit by a car while trying to save John, which resulted in a broken leg, and I really needed his company. To my surprise, he was called away by Lucy with just one phone call. It was only because Lucy had a cold. On a rainy day, John made up an excuse for not being able to pick me up, and when I turned around, I saw him driving by with Lucy, splashing water all over me. Late at night, I found myself alone in a vast, empty room while Jon was out having a great time with Lucy at a bar. Even Grandma Fu fell silent for a moment after hearing this, and finally sighed. "Grandma, I will always remember your kindness, but feelings cannot be forced," I choked out. "Sophia, it's not your fault, it's my failure as a parent." That incident, I'd heard from Jon that Lucy had already been expelled, but it turned out he had lied. "No matter what you decide, I will support you." Grandma Fu sighed and hung up the phone. In fact, I knew that her attitude towards Lucy had always been clear. When Jon first brought Lucy home, Grandma Fu was very angry and even told her to leave. I thought Jon would listen to Grandma Fu's words, believing he could change her opinion. I didn't expect that Jon would blame me for speaking harshly and stirring up trouble, accusing me of being narrow-minded. I had already explained many times and even investigated Lucy's background, telling Jon about her history of dating wealthy men, but he just wouldn't believe me. This is likely the result of bias. Lucy sent me a pretentious voice message saying, "Sophia, it's right for you to get a divorce." Jon talked about all your flaws in bed. At the same time, she also sent me 7 or 8 photos of herself in bed with Jon, clearly trying to provoke me. In the past, if I encountered something like this, would definitely cry and make a fuss or call to argue. But now, I feel no agitation at all. "You can have this fickle man. I wish you both a lifetime together." With nowhere to go. After sending that message, I blocked and deleted Lucy, then put my phone aside and fell into a deep sleep. I don't know how long it was before I was awakened by loud banging on the door. I had no choice but to go and take a look, and I saw an intimidating Jon standing outside the door. A few friends were following him, wearing amused smiles. Clearly, Jon was upset that I hadn't apologized, feeling embarrassed, so he came to confront me personally. Drunkenly, he pointed at me and demanded that I kneel and admit my mistakes immediately. I coldly asked, "On what grounds?" "Everyone knows you're just a love-struck admirer. Sophia can't actually live without me. Everything you do is just to get my attention," Jon said with a smile, and his friends laughed along. In the past, I really was a complete love-struck admirer. To make up for my debts to Grandma Fu, and out of my love for Jon, I went along with everything and tolerated it all every day. But now, things are different. I've come to understand. Kneeling down to apologize? Impossible. Jon continued to drink, saying, "As long as you kneel, I will forgive you. We are still a couple, and you are still the lady of the Fu family. Don't worry, I will reduce my interactions with Lucy in the future." Last night, she was the one who wanted to say goodbye to me. His friends nearby had already lifted their phones, ready to record the video, intending to upload it online and burden me with negative comments. I closed the door and returned to the kitchen to get a basin of water, then splashed it on Jon's face. "Wake up, Jon. We're done. You and Lucy are so in love. You should be thanking me for making it happen, right? So what's really going on here?" I said calmly. Jon was taken aback, his face turning pale. Gritting his teeth, he said, "Sophia, you will definitely regret this. By the time you realize it, crying and begging me won't help." I couldn't be bothered to respond to him and slammed the door shut, leaving him outside shouting angrily. At that moment, the housekeeper from the Fu family called me and said, "Ms. Lee, it's not good. The old lady has had a heart attack and has been hospitalized." I rushed out without having time to change, still in my pajamas. Outside, Jon was still waiting. When he saw me come out, a smug expression appeared on his face, and he said, "What's wrong? Are you regretting it so soon?" I quickly replied that my grandmother had been hospitalized due to a heart attack. I frowned. "No way, you're lying to me." Jon didn't believe me, so I bypassed him and left. By the time I arrived at the hospital, Grandma Fu had been moved from the emergency room to the intensive care unit. "Sophia, I'm sorry for what I did. I shouldn't have tried to set you up with my grandson," Grandma Fu said, holding my hand, tears streaming down her face. I shook my head, and before I could comfort her, Jon suddenly pushed the door open. "Grandma, did you really have a heart attack?" He looked surprised at first, then turned to me and accused, "It's all your fault. If you hadn't suddenly brought up the divorce, how could Grandma have gotten so angry that she got sick? Hurry up and hold a press conference to publicly admit your mistakes. The fault lies with you. How can you blame Sophia?" Before I could respond, Grandma Fu couldn't help but retort, "Grandma, feelings are not eternal and unchanging. If it weren't for the moral pressure from you and Sophia back then, I wouldn't have agreed to the marriage. John grunted a few times and continued, Lucy is a good girl. I like her and want to be with her. Is that not allowed? You're the one who's trying to break us apart. Grandma Fu was so angry that her eyes widened, and her chest heaved with emotion. I quickly comforted Grandma Fu and then confronted John, asking, when have we ever forced you? You were the one who confessed first and wanted to get engaged. He dismissively replied, Sophia, don't think I don't have something on you. If you push me too far, we'll both end up in a bad situation. I responded, Grandma, I'm not a child anymore. I have my own connections, and I can live well without you. At this point, Lucy and I will definitely be happy together. Just wait and see how you'll regret it. After saying this, he slammed the door and left. Grandma Fu trembled with anger and fainted directly. The monitoring devices around her began to sound alarms. I rushed out of the ward, frantically calling for a nurse. Although John was still in the hallway, when he heard my shout, he turned around and sneered, Sophia, don't pretend, I'm not falling for your tricks. After saying that, he walked away. I didn't have time to deal with John. I joined several nurses in taking Grandma Fu to the emergency room. While I anxiously waited, I thought about calling John. Hello, Grandma's heart disease has recurred, and the doctor says this time it's serious. After all, John is Grandma Fu's only living relative, so I had to inform him. Don't try to scare me. You're just pretending with my grandma because you're really afraid that I'm about to leave, and you want to trick me into coming back. I see through your tricks. No matter how much you bow your head and apologize now, I won't forgive you. John seemed particularly impatient. I'm not lying to you. Grandma's situation is really dangerous. Every time I talk to John, he always suspects me. Lucy casually fabricated a lie, claiming that I had called her and cursed her out. John believed her and even scolded me harshly, threatening that if I troubled Lucy again, he would kill me. It was truly frustrating. John angrily hung up the phone. I stared blankly at the screen, sighed, and muttered to myself, John, you will surely regret this. More than 3 hours later, the doctor emerged from the emergency room, his face filled with regret as he told me, I'm sorry, Ms. Lee, we did our best. Mrs. Fu suffered 2 acute incidents, and both her heart and mind have sustained severe damage. There is nothing more we can do. She still has a breath left and wants to see you. When I heard this, I was so shocked that I took 2 steps back. Tears instantly flooded my eyes. I rushed into the emergency room and collapsed beside Grandma Fu. I remembered how I was once helpless and desperate enough to almost jump off a bridge, and it was Grandma Fu who passed by, patiently advising me and even giving me a job opportunity. After that, she cared for me very much, offering money to help my parents with their medical expenses. My heart ached more and more, and I cried even harder. Sophia, don't cry. Life and death are commonplace. At my age, living doesn't hold much joy anymore, and my biggest worry is you. Grandma Fu weakly held my hand and said, you are very filial. I've seen everything you've done. That's why I made a will early on, leaving all my assets to you. Remember, no matter how much John asks you for money, don't give him a dime. He is nothing but a prodigal. No matter how much money you give him, Lucy will spend it all. I nodded, unsure of what to say. Grandma Fu smiled gently, slowly closed her eyes, and left this world. Overwhelmed with grief, I cried out and collapsed onto Grandma Fu, losing consciousness suddenly. I didn't wake up until an hour later. The doctor and nurses advised me to face this change with strength. Struggling to hold back my sorrow, I made another call to John to inform him of the news. Fortunately, the call went through. Sophia, what's the matter? John is in the shower. However, it wasn't John who spoke, but Lucy's taunting voice. She informed John that their grandmother had passed away. I wiped away my tears and said, I will pass it on. Lucy calmly said her goodbye and hung up the phone. She must have been very happy inside. After all, without her grandmother as an obstacle, she could go home with John whenever she wanted. However, when the clock struck midnight, John still hadn't shown up. I had intended to call or send a message, only to find that I had been blocked. John, is your heart really that cold? Grandma cared so much for you, and now I've totally seen through you. You're truly an ungrateful person. I have been silently dealing with Grandma Fu's funeral by myself, when I received shocking news from the lawyer. A sudden wave of media has appeared, exposing negative news about me. Some people accuse me of embezzlement, while others claim that I took advantage of the Fu family's assets, deliberately got John drunk, and forced him to marry me. There are rumors that I'm keeping a young gigolo and even entering hotels with male subordinates, and there are even photos to prove it. I suddenly found myself caught in a whirlwind of public scrutiny, facing endless attacks and insults online. No wonder Jon suddenly left during the wedding. It turns out Sophia really is a problematic person. To be honest, I never wanted to marry her either. I heard that Sophia even took the initiative to propose a divorce. It seems she is just keeping up appearances and will soon file for a quick divorce too. The image of Mrs. Fu is disappointing, and the people around me have strange views of me. I often hear them whispering. Even my parents, who are far away, have been affected, it seems. Someone leaked their address. They told me that when they woke up, they found dirty substances thrown in front of their door and the character for death was drawn there. There's a lot of speculation both inside and outside the village. I can only reassure them that I'm fine, and once Grandma Fu's funeral is over, the truth will come to light. However, I understand that this matter is likely orchestrated by Jon behind the scenes. He had threatened me before, claiming to have leverage over me. On the eve of Grandma Fu's 7th day of mourning, public opinion intensified. I found myself completely nailed to the pillar of shame. However, I did not rush to respond, as I knew that the greater the outcry, the stronger the backlash against Jon would be in the future. You might think that I've been silent for a long time, but Jon believes he has the upper hand and finally decided to call me. He said, "Sophia, are you feeling very miserable right now? Are you suffering every night? If you hold a press conference to publicly apologize and persuade your grandmother to hand over the company's power to me, I'll let you off the hook. What do you think?" He had a triumphant look on his face. I can imagine how high the corners of Jon's mouth are smiling. "If there's something to discuss, let's talk about it when we meet tomorrow," I answered calmly. "Sure, just tell me a place." Jon smiled, and Lucy next to him praised him, saying that Jon is really impressive, just like playing with little ants. "Qinglin Cemetery," I said. "Tomorrow is the day of Grandma Fu's burial, and I hope her only relative, Jon, can come to see her off. Otherwise, Grandma Fu will surely feel uneasy in the afterlife. It's really unsettling that we have to meet at the cemetery." "Forget it, it's all the same anyway. Just as long as you don't suddenly change your mind tomorrow." After expressing his dissatisfaction, Jon hung up the phone. The next morning, I arrived at the cemetery with the urn and some relatives, while Jon followed closely behind, holding Lucy in his arms. In addition, they also invited over a dozen well-known media outlets to cover the entire event. Jon looked at me coldly and said sarcastically, "You really have some nerve to bring so many people here as witnesses." Lucy chimed in. "Jon, this isn't about her admitting her mistakes. It feels more like moral coercion." She pointed out that even a casket had been prepared, as if to threaten you in this way. Jon's expression suddenly darkened, and he gritted his teeth, saying, "Sophia, you're truly despicable. But this trick won't work on me." The relatives around us began to whisper among themselves, and their gazes gradually turned strange. They obviously didn't understand that Jon didn't even know about his grandmother's passing. "I'm not threatening you today, I just want you to fulfill your responsibility as a grandson," I said to Jon calmly. "Jon, she's scolding you," Lucy interjected immediately, trying to stir up chaos. "Sophia, have you made a mistake? Have you forgotten the purpose of our meeting today?" Jon angrily stepped forward and overturned the urn, continuing to shout, "Who are you trying to scare with this urn? Even if you were really dead, I wouldn't care, because you were never a good person anyway." The ashes fell to the ground like snowflakes. The media quickly started filming, and the friends and family around were in shock. I hurriedly knelt down, crying as I gathered the ashes and placed them into the urn. Seeing me like this, Jon became even more furious and began to push my head down, trying to force me to kneel and admit my wrongdoing. I shouted, "Get away from me. This is Grandma's ashes. You scattered Grandma's ashes completely. You're really unfilial." I struggled, but I was no match for Jon's strength and could only let him bully me. "Sophia, Grandma treated you so well, yet you actually cursed her and even used her to deceive me." Jon pressed down hard on my head, causing me to lose my balance and fall to the ground, accidentally hitting the ashes again, so I had no choice but to pick them up once more. Taking advantage of the moment, Lucy shouted to more than a dozen media outlets, "Quick, capture this crazy woman's outrageous behavior. She is nothing but an ingrate, mocking the death of her benefactor." The actions of the two left friends and family members in shock once again, and whispers filled the air. "Is Jon sick? How could he not know about his grandmother's passing? Or is he pretending not to know on purpose? I suppose the old lady in heaven must be furious, wondering how she could have such an unreliable grandson. It's disgraceful. To drop your grandmother's ashes. Now that is a grave mistake. I had begun to question the rumors circulating outside. Sophia. Doesn't seem so bad after all. It's actually Jon and Lucy's behavior that makes me uncomfortable. When I heard these discussions, Jon's expression changed as he realized the seriousness of the situation and asked me, "Are those ashes really Grandma's?" I glanced up at Jon, and he immediately took a hesitant step back, murmuring, "Impossible, absolutely impossible." At that moment, the lawyer stepped forward and handed him the death certificate issued by the police, saying, "Jon, today marks the 7th day since the old lady's passing." Jon stared intensely at the death certificate, then retreated a few more steps, his legs suddenly giving way as he collapsed to the ground, tears streaming down his face like pearls. "Jon, could this death certificate be fake?" Lucy asked, her face pale. "It can't possibly be fake." Jon shook his head. Jon, your mind is filled with thoughts of Lucy, to the point where you've forgotten about your own grandmother, haven't you?" When I asked this, Jon's expression clearly showed panic and guilt. "I don't know, I really thought you were lying to me." At this point, he suddenly clenched his fists and angrily asked, "Sophia, why didn't you tell me that Grandma passed away? Were you intentionally hiding it from me in order to inherit her estate?" "Jon, you've misunderstood," she replied. "In fact, the old lady had already made her will a year ago, and it hasn't been changed at all." The lawyer said a few words to me, but Jon didn't pay attention. He just stared at me, shouting, and demanding to know why I didn't inform him. "Why? I called you." I glanced at Lucy and continued speaking. "At that moment, she received a call and informed me that you had gone to take a shower and would relay the message accurately." Lucy, who already had a somewhat pale complexion, looked even more bloodless, as if dusted with flour. She defended herself, saying, "Sophia, while food can be eaten without much thought, words should not be spoken carelessly. I have never received a call from you." A hint of luck flashed across her lips, as if she believed she could evade responsibility. I scoffed and took out my phone, playing the recording of the call from that night. After the fallout with Jon, I had kept all the contact records just in case. The evidence is overwhelming. Lucy swallowed hard, sweat dripping continuously from her forehead. Jon glared at Lucy, gritting his teeth as he asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" This was the first time I had seen him so angry with Lucy. He had always been gentle and considerate towards her, fearing that she might get hurt. Lucy grasped Jon's arm tightly and said nervously, "Jon, let me explain. I forgot." At that moment, Jon slammed his hand down beside him. He raised his hand and slapped Lucy angrily, saying, "You are clearly hiding something from me." This scene was recorded by the media present. Lucy covered her face, crying sorrowfully, and pleaded with Jon, "I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to." She tried to grasp his arm. In the past, whenever Lucy cried, Jon would hold her tightly, feeling heartbroken. But this time, he merely shot her a cold glare. "Sophia, I'm sorry. I didn't know." Jon looked at me, but his words trailed off as he reached out to take the urn from me. "You have no right to touch it." I pushed Jon away, saying coldly, "Today, I called you here hoping you could quietly accompany Annan as we bid farewell to Grandma Fu." I personally placed Grandma Fu's urn into the grave, and the staff began to seal it. Jon realized he had nothing to say and merely stood by in silence, watching. Once the staff finished their work, he knelt down and bowed several times. Upon seeing this, Lucy immediately ran to the tombstone and bowed to Grandma Fu. Jon didn't stop her. Clearly, he was still accommodating Lucy, even though she made him miss his grandmother's funeral. At that moment, a reporter suddenly rushed in front of me and asked, "I heard that Ms. Lee is keeping a toy boy outside. Is that true?" The scene immediately fell silent. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for my response. I said it was nonsense. I answered briefly. However, photos had already spread online. The reporter continued to press for more details. Sophia looked at me, her expression much more relaxed than before, as if she was anticipating something. Jon also glanced at me a few more times. His guilt was not directed at me, and it was clear that he also wanted to see me make a fool of myself. I said calmly that the photo was fake. The lawyer nearby noticed my expression and quickly approached me, publicly presenting a verification notice. He stated that this was commissioned by Ms. Lee and requested the police to conduct an investigation, confirming that it was indeed a forgery, and indicated that the police would hold the responsible parties accountable. The scene immediately erupted in discussion again, with everyone astonished that it was fake and speculating on who was manipulating things behind the scenes. Sophia had been under a lot of pressure these days, juggling the responsibilities of arranging the elderly lady's funeral while also enduring the weight of public opinion. I guess I would have broken down long ago. Those who spread rumors are truly infuriating. I specifically glanced at Lucy. Her complexion was worse than before, and she was trembling, looking quite guilty. The media cameras were all focused on Lucy and Jon. This photo was given to me by you. What's going on? Jon furrowed his brow and asked Lucy. I received it from someone else too. I don't know if it's true, Lucy replied, looking down with a trembling voice. I find it hard to believe such things, Jon said, his tone still indifferent. Jon, I'm sorry, I was tricked too. Lucy hid behind Jon like a little kitten, her voice trembling as she spoke. They keep taking pictures of me. I'm so scared. Don't be afraid. Jon seemed to brush aside what had happened earlier. He tenderly pulled her into his arms and firmly said to the media, Lucy is also a victim. Please stop taking pictures, so she doesn't have to face online harassment. Hearing this, I couldn't help but let out a self-deprecating smile. Here it is. Look, the lines between love and indifference are very clear. Lucy made a mistake, yet Jon has always treated her as the victim, worrying about her being subjected to online abuse. But as the real victim, I haven't received a single apology. Thank you, Jon, you're really kind. Lucy finally smiled, immediately gave Jon a kiss, and cast a challenging glance at me. It seemed she was saying, so what if you're right? Jon still supports me. Lucy, don't you realize how unlikable you come across? You're clearly a notorious person, yet you insist on pretending to be a lady. I said with I won't go soft on a woman like her. Jon, just look at her. Lucy pouted and looked at Jon for help, appearing somewhat aggrieved. Sophia, even though you took care of my grandmother and I may have misunderstood you before, Lucy is also a victim. She did nothing wrong. You don't need to be so harsh. Jon said with a frown. Victim? I laughed. Lucy has been relying on wealthy men since university, and she even scammed money from her classmates and bullied her roommates. That photo was fabricated by her. Lucy hurriedly defended herself, saying, Jon, don't listen to her. I've been devoted to you. I truly didn't know that the photo was fake. Jon nodded to show his trust and then said to me, Lucy is simple and kind. She's not the kind of person you described at all. Spreading rumors comes with a price and legal responsibility. I couldn't help but chuckle and replied, You're right, there are consequences for spreading rumors. As soon as I finished speaking, the sound of a siren echoed, and 3 police cars arrived at the scene. The officers got out of the cars and walked straight toward Jon and Lucy. After the investigation, it was found that you slandered Miss Sophia and spread rumors online, causing serious consequences. Lucy even faked a photo, and the evidence is conclusive. Please cooperate with the investigation, the police officer said sternly. Upon hearing this, Jon was filled with rage and immediately slapped Lucy, accusing her, You deceived me again. At that moment, the trust between both sides completely shattered. Lucy immediately burst into tears. Jon glared at her, wanting to strike her again. The police quickly restrained both of them and took them into the police car together. The scene was fully recorded by the media and was quickly released. In just half an hour, the public opinion online reversed completely. It turns out that Jon and Lucy are the real troublemakers. Jon abandoned his own grandmother for an unreliable woman and framed Sophia, which is truly disappointing. I hope they are permanently banned from causing harm to others. They truly deserve to be punished. Lucy is my classmate, and during our freshman year, she got together with a rich heir. They went to nightclubs every day and even wandered around outside at night without clothes. Originally, those who attacked me later turned to criticize Jon and Lucy. I ended up benefiting from the misfortune, successfully establishing my position in the company, and no one questioned the authenticity of my inheritance from Grandma Fu anymore. Although many media outlets sought to interview me, I declined and instead started a series of charitable activities. A few days later, the lawyer hurried into the office. Ms. Lee, this is the compensation agreement I drafted. Please take a look. He handed me a document concerning claims against Jon and Lucy. I smiled, picked up my water cup, and said, There's no need for a claim. Let's withdraw the case. I won't hold them accountable anymore. The lawyer was taken aback, looking very surprised. After a few seconds, he finally reacted. Ms. Lee, do you really intend to let them go? Of course not. I shook my head, took a sip of water, and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Rather than keeping them locked up for a few days, it's better to let them torment each other sooner. I understand now. The lawyer smiled faintly. Shortly after the withdrawal of the lawsuit, Jon and Lucy came out. Jon learned that I had inherited the Fu family's assets and gained control of the company. He had come to the office several times to cause a scene and even hired a lawyer to sue me, but he was unsuccessful each time. There were some negative comments about me online, portraying me as too heartless. In order to quell the public opinion, I converted all of Jon's shares into cash and paid him off. Both parties signed a divorce agreement, stipulating that we would no longer interfere with each other's lives. Later, I went abroad for business and didn't return until a whole month later. As soon as I got off the plane, I received a call from my assistant, informing me that Jon had come to the company. When I saw Jon, I couldn't help but be taken aback. Compared to his previous polished appearance, Jon now had unkempt hair, worn-out clothes, and he smelled of sweat, as if he hadn't bathed in a long time. Even his shoes had holes in them. Logically, the money Jon had earned should have been enough for him to live comfortably, unless something unexpected had happened. He saw me and immediately knelt down, pleading for help. "Sophia, please save me. If there's something to say, just say it," I replied coldly. The security guard quickly stepped in front of me, worried that Jon might do something to me. "I'm sorry, Sophia. I disappointed you in the past, and I truly regret it." Jon slammed his head against the ground, tears and snot streaming down his face as he sorrowfully exclaimed, "Lucy is a liar. She's truly an untrustworthy person. She urged me to invest, but in the end, I lost everything and then turned around to embrace someone else. I must have been blind to have been attracted to her." Despite Jon's unfortunate situation, I felt no sympathy for him at all. "Isn't all of this your choice? Since you've chosen Lucy, you have to bear the consequences," I said coldly. "I'm sorry, really sorry, I regret it. I should have cherished you well. You are so virtuous and kind, but alas, I was indeed wrong." As Jon spoke, he slapped himself hard with his palm. I shook my head and smiled, thinking that he probably wasn't regretting it, he was just afraid of living a hard life. Even if Jon truly felt remorse, that was his own choice and had nothing to do with me. "No, I've truly made a mistake. I want to start over with you. After all these years we've spent together, we can definitely reconcile and go back to how things were. From now on, I will listen to you. You can leave everything to me, whether it's doing the laundry, cooking, or cleaning." Jon looked at me with hopeful eyes, like a dog waiting for its owner to forgive it. I remained indifferent and raised my hand to the security guard, saying, "Throw him out. I don't want to see him." "Stop, Sophia, I beg you." Jon struggled, but he was still escorted out by the security. He didn't leave. Instead, he knelt at the company entrance, trying to make me feel soft-hearted. Unfortunately, I am no longer that weak person. I have become independent and strong, no longer trapped by love. Passers-by recognized Jon, taking pictures and mocking him. Unable to bear it, Jon left in shame. Half a month later, I received a call from the police, informing me that both Jon and Lucy had passed away. Jon, feeling aggrieved, confronted Lucy for accountability and was met with a lot of ridicule. In a fit of anger, he dragged Lucy with him as they jumped off an abandoned construction site together. To honor them, I kindly arranged for their burial side by side and brought a bouquet of flowers to their gravestone, softly saying, "Congratulations on finding each other in the end."